job. A longtime Hall of Fame voter, Howard Balzer, now on Ryan Minuch with Jimmy B on Fox Sports 910.
Let's get right to it. Howard Balzer joins us now on the Right to It guest line. All right, Howard, Zach Ertz asked to be waived, and thanks to J.J. Watt from CBS Sports. Yeah. So watch out for your job there, Howard. J.J. Watt's coming after you. I'm curious when it comes to
if I had a player that was a close friend just calls me and tells me, hey, here's what's going on, and you're okay to put it out there, then that's a good one by JJ. But obviously, both families are very close.
So if he gets picked up, let's just say it's either Baltimore or Eagles. They seem to be the two teams with the Ravens and Eagles. Let's say just goes to Philly. They have to pick up the remainder of his salary. Is the Cardinals in any way, will they get a draft pick the final next year?
No, they won't get a draft pick. The only way compensatory draft picks only occur for unrestricted free agents.
Okay.
That are in that period when their contracts are expired and they become unrestricted free agents in March each year at the start of the league year. I mean, even in the off season, if a player is released by a team, and obviously we see a lot of players released that have time on their contract, those players do not count in the compensatory formula either. And so any player released, no matter when it is, does not count against that. And like I said, it's only for unrestricted the free agents whose contract has expired after the previous season. So
no compensation at all other than the Cardinals don't have to pay the remainder of his salary and next year. That's really it.
Right, exactly. And I think I'm fairly confident in saying Zach Ertz is probably not going to be here next year. He's got a relatively big salary. I don't think the Cardinals were going to pay that, so he likely would have been released anyway. What this also does, however, especially if he gets claimed, and that's a big question now because the team claiming him has to do it by tomorrow, and then they would have to pay him for this week, even though obviously there's no chance in him playing, much less because there was no injury settlement that was indicated that the Cardinals, made that statement on the league personnel notice. No injury settlement, so that tells me he's still not totally healthy. And so like I said, anybody now, if the Eagles, Ravens, whoever. If there's teams that think another team's going to claim them, then they might put in a waiver claim just to make sure they get him and are willing to pay him for this week. But the other aspect of it, especially if he's claimed, with the remaining approximately $2.9 million in salary, while the Cardinals not only wouldn't have to pay it, that also would roll over into next year's salary cap. So teams can roll over unused cap dollars from one year to the next. And so that would provide even more cap room than the Cardinals are already going to have in 2024.
How do you sense, I'd be curious to see when you ask guys their opinion about him wanting to be released and get the vibe of that locker room about there might be other guys that may be asked to be released maybe after the season or asked to be traded, not be a part of the rebuilding regime there at the Cardinals?
Well, I guess you never know about that, but I will say this. I mean, he obviously probably had a sense, and there was a lot of reports, and I wasn't able to, I didn't see this yesterday, but several of the reporters noticed Zach Ertz having a conversation with Monty Ossenfort on the patio outside, the team's locker room area and lunchroom area, which is kind of odd that they would be doing that when there's people around. But I think that Zach Ertz probably had the sense that he probably wasn't going to be here next year anyway. And so he figures, hey, there's not that much time left in the season. Who knows if the Cardinals are even going to activate me from injured reserve when I am totally healthy? Because obviously, Trey McBride's playing well. They're starting to play Higgins more, and these young players are playing more. And so I think it was more about that he said, hey, I want to play football. And if this could get me to another team where I have a chance to be in the playoffs, as he just turned 33 earlier this month, and so he knows he's looking at the downside of his career. So I think it was more about that than anything. And so, there's not that many players left, really, when you look at it to say, oh boy, release me so I can go somewhere else. I mean, there's not that many players, that are veterans like that. And obviously, a lot of times the contract also enters into it in terms of whether it makes economic sense in a lot of levels for the Cardinals, depending on signing bonus, proration, and all those things.
Mm-hmm. Howard Balzer's our guest on the Right Toyota guest line. Howard, do you expect a better performance out of Kyler Murray, even though they're going to go play against that Steelers defense in not so pleasant weather?
Yeah, that's the thing. Although the weather report that I saw isn't that bad. I mean, it's supposed to be cloudy, maybe a little bit of rain, but it's supposed to be in the mid to high 50s. So it's not like it's going to be bad weather, but obviously a hostile environment, and that means loud and noisy, which makes it tough for the offense to communicate. And this is a situation now with Murray and the center, yell to Froholt, and the offensive line. They're all trying to communicate, and you end up having to use silent count, which when you have a guy who's in his now fourth game with a new system and getting comfortable with everything is going to be an issue. So my expectations are not that high, quite honestly. I mean, we've seen, once again, Michael Wilson and Hollywood Brown have not practiced this week. And so that tells me, maybe Hollywood will try to go, but he didn't look 100% in last week's game. And so, but the other thing is, it's interesting, guys. Jonathan Gannon was asked on Monday about the connection with Murray and Brown, and it hasn't been clicking yet. Obviously, it had only been 3 games. And Gannon said, well, we'll keep working on that in practice and getting these guys on the same page and blah, blah, blah. Well, you know what? He hardly practiced last week, was only limited on Wednesday, didn't practice Thursday and Friday. Now he hasn't practiced this week. So I don't know how there can be a whole lot of expectations for Kyler and the entire offense. I mean, it really is the entire offense. And they're going to have to, you would think they're going to have to be successful running the ball to be able to create some balance in this offense and be successful on first down. Whereas they had the first drive last week, which was a good one, and then in four consecutive 3-and-outs, there were incomplete passes on first down, and all of a sudden you're in second, third, and not horribly long, but second, third, and long, and those can be tough to convert, obviously against good defenses. So I just think this offense right now is still a huge work in progress. And with some of the players missing, especially at that wide receiver spot, if in fact Wilson and Brown, whether he plays this week or isn't 100%, then that's going to have an effect on how successful you're going to be on offense.
Howard, sorry, we are short on time today. We got about less than 30 left. What are you working on right now in Go PHNX?
Well, I just had a story that went up earlier today about Anquan Bolden being a semifinalist for the Pro Football Hall of Fame, but taking it from the angle that there are 6 wide receivers that are semifinalists. And I said, I don't know if he'll get in eventually. I think there's a decent chance he will, but it's going to be a long wait for Anquan Bolden. And especially you start comparing, all 6 of these receivers have numbers that are relatively similar. And the crazy thing I found is in the story is that, Larry Fitzgerald becomes eligible in 2026. And while his total numbers are much higher because he played 17 seasons, when you look at things like average catches per game, average yards per game, average touchdowns per game, his numbers are actually pretty close to these 6 guys that are semifinalists this year. So that just shows how hard it is to get wide receivers in the Hall of Fame. And I deal with all that in the story that's up now at gophnx.com.
Check it out. Also, you can follow him on Twitter at hbalzer721. Howard, thank you. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, guys. Talk to you in December.
You got it. That's next week. That's Howard Balzer here on Rockin' Manooch with Jimmy B. Coming up, we'll finish up the show out here at Twin Peaks.